Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Hey there, thanks for listening. Today we are chatting with Greg Cryos, who's the founder of 250OK. 250OK was recently acquired, and we sit down to talk about that. A little bit of what got them here and what's next. It's a super interesting discussion. I want to thank Greg for taking the time to chat with me. After the episode, if you haven't already subscribed, please do that. Leave us a review, feedback. It would mean a lot. If you want to leave us a comment about this specific episode, I can make sure that Greg gets that feedback as well. And we forgot to do a shout out to Fuel Merchandise Group during the podcast. So I don't know what kind of swag 250OK has. I know they at least have t-shirts because I have one of them. And what kind of, what's the coolest thing that they've ever given out. But if you would like to get some swag, you can do that at Fuel Merchandise Group. It's fuelmerchandise.com. Mention Startup Competitors and get 10% off of your first order when you talk with them. Again, fuelmerchandise.com. Thanks so much. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we have Greg Cryos, who's the founder and CEO of 250OK. Greg, welcome.
Thanks.
And you might have an updated job title?
Yeah, I think it's Chief Ambassador at Validity.
Chief Ambassador at Validity. Right on. So you were on the podcast a year and a half ago-ish. Does that seem about right?
We'll go with that, sure.
And you just recently sold 250OK. So I had asked you to come back on and potentially talk with us about that. So I'd love to hear actually first, for somebody who may not have listened to that prior episode, why don't you give the super quick elevator pitch for 250OK?
Sure. 250OK is an email analytics platform that helps email marketers send better email and make sure it gets delivered to the inbox.
Awesome. Now the 60-second elevator pitch for Validity.
Validity is a company that helps you trust your data. So it's kind of a combination of what we do along with some other pieces to help dedupe records, make sure all of your contacts are kind of in one centralized place, and just know that you can trust the data and eventually be sending, the right message to the right person at the right time.
Nice. And then at the time of exit, give us kind of any sort of current stats, vanity metrics for 250OK, just so people kind of understand where you guys were as a team and a company at that point.
Yeah. So, we were in a really good spot. We've been growing, roughly 60 some odd % year over year. We were not burning cash to do that. We were accidentally profitable, I think, the year before. And, customer retention rate was north of 80%. Revenue retention was north of 90%. Just had a really good business going. Employee count, we were at 54 people, 30 some here in Indianapolis, the rest distributed throughout the world. We have an engineering team in Brazil. We have a guy in India, a guy in Canada, and the rest kind of distributed throughout the US.
Awesome. Accidentally profitable?
Yeah. We tend to operate around break even, and we had a quarter that was a little, better than expected. So, had to end up paying some taxes that we didn't plan on.
Nice. And you have raised capital in the past, correct?
We did.
All right. And talk about how you started conversations with Validity and how that all unfolded.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. They are backed by a couple of private equity firms, Silversmith Capital out of Boston and Providence Equity as well in the Northeast. And one of the guys from Silversmith got introduced to me through somebody else here in town. We had an intro call. I think that was maybe about this time last year. And they were just curious about the space, what I thought about the market, wanted to learn a little bit more about us, wanted to talk a little bit more about our main competitor at the time. And a month later, it was announced that they had acquired our main competitor. So we found that a little interesting. They kind of reapproached us again, I think in early to mid-June.
You can say who that main competitor was, right?
Yeah, it was Return Path.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so they'd approached us again in June and said, hey, we're still interested in the business. We think you guys are doing, great things. And, we said, okay, and just kind of let them know that, We know what we have. We think the business is doing really well. We're not interested in, kind of a typical PE type multiple, nor were we really interested in a PE type play where they might not want to keep the people or, do some of those things. So, for us, that was, first and foremost was, if we were to do something, what would happen with the people? What's your big vision? How do we play into that? And are we a critical piece of that or, kind of an afterthought? It was a good conversation and things kind of went silent. We just kept our heads down, building a good business. And in December, they approached us with an unsolicited offer, and it was a pretty good one. What really, I think, surprised us and kind of pushed us in the edge of, let's explore this a little bit further was their CEO, Mark Briggs, flew out to have lunch with us. And we walked away just really impressed and really liked him and thought, okay, this could be really interesting. So we just started having conversations on, again, those same things. Like, tell me your vision for the team, because when you acquired a couple other people in our space, one was Bright Verify, which is a pretty small company based, I think, out of North Carolina, but they had some people in Atlanta and a guy in New York as well. But then with the Return Path acquisition, only about half the employees got retained. So it looked, like a typical PE, type play, right? Mark took some time to explain the situation and why that really, wasn't the case and why they wanted the company and kind of how those things transpired, and really gave us a lot of clarity on that and made it, crystal clear that he wanted everything from 250 OK. He wanted the technology, he wanted the people, and, their goal was to, that everybody would stay on board and be part of the Validity family and go on and be happy and aim at something bigger together. So that was really, important and interesting, for us. And we always thought it'd be pretty cool if we could have some of the data that Return Path had that we didn't at 250 OK and could plug that into our platform. What could we really go do? And there was a lot of good people over there that we had a lot of respect for as well. So it's like, man, this just seems really cool. And the more we, kind of talked, the more we liked it, the more things made sense, the more, we really got along with Mark and the other executives that we met. And honestly, the last thing we really talked about was price.
That's awesome. You had, or maybe I'll use my words to not get you in trouble. And if you can't answer any of these, just say so. I would have said, you mentioned Return Path was your primary competitor. I would have even said at times, maybe from a marketing perspective, it looked like the two of you were antagonistic towards one another. What was it like potentially getting rolled in with them? And you said, you thought they had some valuable data and some great people over there, but I would love to know, just with as much competition as the two companies had, how was that, both from your team's perspective and theirs? Yeah,
Yeah, we were, a bit antagonistic, but I think for us, and I can only speak for us, but, for us, it was always about seeing things that we either knew weren't true or were slightly misleading. And we felt, maybe some uneducated people in the market were being taken advantage of. So we always had the mentality of challenging, things that were being said, backing up with data and trying not to make it personal. And that was always our approach. There were some campaigns that we did that people had some pretty strong opinions about either way, but, opinions are opinions, right? So I think I certainly have my opinions. People don't have to agree with them. They don't agree with ours. So it is what it is. But, we try to stay true, really to the facts on how we, marketed against them. But, getting back to the main point is, they were actually a tremendous marketing and sales company. And they did, that aspect really well. It was obviously what I think their, core strength was. Ours, I think, was really more, product technology and some of those other things, but it was never personal. There was a lot of good people there. Like I said, we had a ton of respect for. So, for us, never was really an issue, still isn't an issue. And as we've kind of got to work with them initially, it's been a lot of fun so far. So I'm really excited.
Nice. Are they still two separate products, two separate brands in the marketplace? What's the future vision there, if you can talk about it?
I'll be happy to talk about it. I think the vision is that 250 OK will be the platform, going forward. I think it'll still operate under the 250 OK brand for at least a little while. I'm sure that will, potentially change and become the Validity brand some point, but starting to incorporate some of the data sets and other positives, from Return Path into our platform. And as we went through due diligence, they looked at what we had. We were in the process of building and launching a new interface and customer experience, and they really liked that. And we just think some of the missing pieces that they had could make that more powerful. So it seemed to make the most sense, and that's where we ended up.
Awesome. What was the total time from founding to exit?
A bit of a tough question. So I originally launched an alpha version of the first product in 2010, but we didn't close our seed round of funding till February of 2012. So if I say that, that was when we officially launched, 8 years. All
right. Yeah, but if you did your alpha, then that's when you officially launched.
Yeah.
I don't know. When did the ramen noodles start? That's
that was way before 250 OK.
All right. Right on. All right. So can you talk about at all, like from your perspective, what were some of the big things that you learned throughout the process that maybe were surprising to you, or you were very interested and intrigued to learn how they worked? Or like, I mean, I'd love to just know what the experience from your perspective, not about like deal structure and money, but more about like, oh, this is who needs to be involved and how this happens. And these are the questions I should be asking that I maybe never even thought of before.
I gotta say, for me, it was actually pretty easy. And the reason I say that is Arthur Ventures really helped us a ton. Having Patrick Meenan on our board of directors as an investor who used to be on the M&A team at Microsoft, who's been through this numbers of times at various scales and things, was really great. He brought in a law firm that they had worked with on another transaction. Turns out this law firm also represented Bright Verify with Validity in a previous transaction, so they knew their attorneys really well. So it all honestly couldn't have lined up more perfect. And what also made it easy is Mark Briggs, the CEO and founder and chairman of Validity, is just a really good guy. Kind of serial entrepreneur at 4 companies before Validity. For all intents and purposes, was retired and decided that this was a unique opportunity, saw something and wanted to go after it. And number one, I think anybody, I gravitate towards people from the Northeast that are very direct and kind of to the point, but that are also honest, just good people. And so, Mark just told us what was going to happen, how it was going to happen, and just said, hey, listen, if there's any, stumbling points along the way, let's just get them out on the table and talk through them. And, we're really interested. We're not just poking around here and trying to learn about your business. And, everything that he said he was going to do, he did. So, all those factors combined made it a pretty quick, seamless, easy transaction, especially for a first-time guy like me.
This episode is brought to you by Full Stack PEO. Most founders start companies because they figured out a better way to solve a problem or serve a need, not because they love tracking payroll, filling out compliance forms, and explaining employee benefits packages. And yet, all that stuff still has to be done. That's why there's Full Stack PEO. Full Stack PEO specializes in turnkey HR for emerging companies, not just those core services, but advice and expertise that help founders maximize employee potential. Curious? Find out more at fullstackpeo.com.
What do you think when you reflect back on maybe some of the key inflection points over the years for 250? What do you think those were?
Yeah, I think some of them are, when it's your first time starting a company and you're just looking for anybody to believe in you and give you a check, you're willing to take that without really wondering, who it's from, what they are like as a person, what their motives are, what they've done to get them to a place in life where they can do that for you, those things. And we didn't always see eye to eye with some of our investors. We had to buy some of them out. It's hard enough kind of going down this path, but not having everyone have your back and not have everyone aligned with, your vision or the team or even just believing in you makes it even harder. So, I would say those were kind of the toughest things, from, I think we talked about this on last podcast, we've always been extremely confident in the platform vision, in our messaging and how we approach the market. That was never honestly anything that ever concerned me. It was just more kind of internal alignment, politics, issues, things that come up that are just massive distractions that you shouldn't be dealing with.
I once heard you say that you have a policy of hiring unders and GSDs at 250 OK. Unpack that. What did you mean by unders?
Yeah, unders, people that are undervalued, underestimated, underappreciated, have a chip on their shoulder, something to prove probably to themselves more than anybody else. I think I fall, kind of into that category.
You definitely fall into that category.
Yeah, those type of people they're just programmed to work their ass off and put their head down and just, they hit a brick wall, they're going to get up and smash into it again. Eventually they're going to knock it down. There's another one waiting. And those are the people I really like. And GSDs, people just get shit done. If you're, I think certain people are suited for certain stages of companies or certain sizes of companies. I guess they're loosely the same, for the way that we operate the business and the way that we do things. If you were sitting around waiting to be told what to do and not finding problems and fixing them and just, being that self-starter, you probably didn't do too well here. But luckily, we didn't have many of those people. I mean, we honestly hired, a lot of great people, never really had much turnover. And I'd like to believe that people were really happy here.
Was it an intentional screening? Did you purposefully screen for that?
Yeah, I think we did. But, most people that we hired just as we posted jobs were people on our network that knew what we were doing, because people would go home and just talk about how much they love their job. And they'd be out talking to former colleagues and other people. And, when they have that passion, they love what they do and they love where they do it, it kind of just breeds this weird little thing, because I think a lot of people are just unhappy at their job, or they're just checking the box. They're kind of in that cruise control place in life. They got a couple kids, they got a mortgage, they got, all these other things, and they can go to, whatever, job they have and kind of put that part of life on autopilot. At some point though, they want that satisfaction from life too. And so I think when people are, hanging out around the hot dog machine, which we have, and talking about things, I think that becomes a little contagious, right? And so they're constantly checking the site and say, hey, I saw you guys posted for this. I want to apply. And so even industry people that I've known for years, would apply for things. And, that's really just the most humbling, kind of flattering thing you can have as a founder or CEO.
What do you attribute the low turnover to?
When people would come in, I'd say, I want to ruin every job that you're ever going to have. I want you to be happy here. I don't want to micromanage anybody. I don't want to have to tell you what to do every second of every day. I mean, we hired you because we think you're smart. We think you deserve to be here. And, we'll kind of just give you some loose guidelines and go. I think at a certain point of scale that tends to break a little bit, because, people need to be held accountable. They need to know how they're measured. They need to be, have that real structure, right, in that place. And at 50, I think 3 or 4 people, wherever we were when the transaction took place, you kind of get to see those deficiencies and where that's falling down. And it's nobody's fault. It's not that they did anything wrong. It's, oh yeah, we didn't have a process for that. That's how that fell through the cracks. Okay, yeah, we probably should. And it's not to the point anymore where you can just walk in somebody's office and, hey man, did you do this? Did you do that? No, they're spread out globally. Again, what's the policy, especially if, on the, infrastructure side and security and, being SOC 2 type 2 compliant introduces a whole lot of things. And, you just continue to grow and you just kind of get to that point where, yeah, that process and procedure and stuff needs to be pretty clearly defined. And yeah, it's a tough corner to turn.
Were there any points along the way you wanted to give up?
No.
None?
Nope.
Why?
Why not? I don't know. I mean, to me, I always looked at failure as I'll go get a job. That's failure. But I don't know. It doesn't cross my mind. There's always a way. And I knew that we were doing all the right things, and I would see it and hear it from customers. I'd hear it from colleagues. I'd hear it from, everyone else, in the very early part of the company. When I first met Ryan, we had run out of money. We were, a couple of years in, we were really small. It was really myself and an engineer, and had another person that was doing, a little bit of sales for us. You kind of get to that point and you're like, man, I hadn't paid myself in 2 years. I was living off money I made as a consultant. And you do kind of wonder, like, what am I doing? Am I just crazy? Like, I pay to go to work. Who does that? Right. Don't most people go to work to get paid? I think I'm doing life wrong.
Yeah.
But luckily I have, some pretty good people around me that it's like, no, dude, you're doing the right thing. Keep going. You shouldn't stop. And you kind of look at that and you hear customers, telling you, even on demos, how happy they are that there's competition in the market, how happy they are that somebody else is building something that can potentially help them. So you start getting all these feedback and all these signals. And it's those things that really, I think, help keep you going when things are a little bit questionable. But as soon as I teamed up with Ryan and Alex, I just kind of knew that I found some missing pieces, that I'd been looking for. And from there, it was a tough, road, but, we just kept hiring really good people, and we had a lot of fun together, and we all just believed in each other. So it was fun.
When were you positive you had product market fit?
Day one.
Really?
Yep.
And just because of your experience before you started 250, okay.
I knew from, my experience at ExactTarget, my experience as a consultant being users of various platforms, none of them were built by anybody who'd actually experienced the problem. They were built by people who were trying to solve a problem that they saw, but they didn't understand the nuances of that. And I could tell because they would ask me questions on what they should be building. I'm like, why am I giving you advice on what to do? Why am I not doing this for myself? If I have all the answers and you build what I tell you to build, maybe I should be doing that. And, just being inspired by other entrepreneurs, Dorsey was one, and just other people I'd met in the email space that were entrepreneurs. Tim McQuillan, who's on my board, was a co-founder of StrongMail, and just some other people that, sometimes you just know. I mean, I always just looked at those people like, man, I want to go do that, but there is a fear factor initially, right? Of, man, am I going to, just stand around and put my toe in the water? Or am I just going to cannonball in? And at some point you just got to do it. And I did, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah. What's next?
Helping Validity. Honestly, I mean, they've got it's, one of the reasons for the decision and that became really clear to me as we went, through due diligence, because I asked myself all the questions that, most people probably do. I mean, is this really the right thing for our people? Are they going to be happy there? Are they, again, when you have people that email you and text you and leaving notes and just tell you how happy they are professionally, that's pretty cool. And so, going in the decision, I'm like, man, is that really right? As I got to learn more about Mark and talk to him about his vision, I'm like, man, wow, we really share a vision. And more importantly, we also shared just values of how to be a good person, how to do the right thing. And as we kept kind of going through that and I saw the size that they were, I also know that I struggle in big environments. I don't like a lot of rules. I don't like to be told what to do.
Hence hiring unders.
Yeah. So it, knowing that if we're going to keep going down this path, you then start to wonder, when is the company no longer a fit for me? And how do I add the most value to the company? So, all those things kind of came into play, and I think there's a really big opportunity at Validity, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised. Right now, I think since they're still pretty young and their model is, really different in a space where, Return Path have been around 20 years. We've been around, we'll say 10 on your timeline. So, that's not a lot of change. I mean, a lot of these brands are and companies are still the same that have been. And to a degree, certain people still think, Salesforce Marketing Cloud is ExactTarget. And even some of the activity that's happened, they still associate things back to those old companies, but you just don't see a lot of change. What's interesting about Validity is, they're only 2 years old and their model is completely different. They're out kind of rolling up these companies and, smashing a lot of things together that should have happened, a long time ago. And we were on the slow path to that, just, building a lot of these things. So they're headed in the same direction, but a completely different model, but they're still establishing their identity, within the email ecosystem and the space. And, I'm terribly excited about the vision and how it's all going to come together.
Talk a little bit about trends that you see coming in the market and what you think that means for what you guys do at 250 and what Validity is going to be doing.
Yeah, I think, trends that we've seen have just been the same thing. You look at, what mailbox providers are doing, just in their interface, their experience, and really trying to bring more trust to brands, right? So, it really first centered around authentication, and then, became about reputation. And then, now we're trying to prevent phishing through things like DMARC, and you're going to start seeing logos in the inbox of companies that, have, their DMARC record in place, and it's called BIMI, and, just continue just building this trust in email, and, Validity is really, kind of centered around that. So I think as, marketers learn to, use their data better and to take all these signals and, not just send out, generic messages to, a group of people, there's always going to be a place for that. But I think, a lot of mailbox providers, especially as we've seen consolidation now, it's really, Google, we'll say Verizon Media Group. If people don't know, they've acquired both Yahoo and AOL, Microsoft, right? They can control overwhelming majority of, the world's mailboxes. But they're kind of forcing the behavior of marketers to, adhere to their rules and their policies. And so, as that experience tends to get better, marketers are going to have to get better at using their own data, taking all those signals in place and understanding, what to do with them. And some of that will, be a combination of technology and people. And eventually, I think it's a lot of problems that can be solved purely by technology and automation.
Dude, congratulations.
Thanks, man.
People want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do it?
I don't know. Let me think of my Validity email address. Is how new I still am. It's greg.cryos@validity.com or greg@250ok.com still works.
Spell Cryos real quick.
KRAIOS.
Perfect. Awesome. Greg, thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.